from Stanton House. Welcome to Cyber Go-to-Market Girl Talk, the go-to podcast for women in cyber. During this series, we will be exploring the background of female go-to-market leaders in cybersecurity vendors. And I'm delighted and honoured to be joined on this series by 7 successful females to hear about how they got to where they are today and the challenges they overcame in doing so. I hope you enjoy the series, and if you would like the opportunity to feature on future seasons, please do get in touch. Thanks for listening. I look forward to sharing each episode with you bi-weekly. I'm delighted to be joined by the wonderful Abigail Maines, the Chief Revenue Officer of Hidden Layer, winners of the RSA 2023 Startup Innovation Sandbox Award and co-founder of fiercenow.org, which exists to educate, energize and embrace all women so that we are all more confident and empowered. So I could not think of a better person to close this series. Welcome. How are you doing?
Well, you're awesome for doing this. I've been looking forward to doing this since you asked me, because this is like the work that we need to put in to get more women in cyber, for sure.
Definitely. No. Well, thank you so much for joining. So yeah, literally the queen herself. Welcome. So yeah, firstly, how have you been since we connected at RSA? I would imagine that your inbox is probably inundated given the recent win with Hidden Layer, but also the Fierce Breakfast event, which was a hit, by the way. It was amazing. So how have you been since then?
Really good. We're very honored at Hidden Layer to be recognized as the most innovative startup at RSA. I'm still kind of on the high off of all of that because it's such a recognition of all the hard work that our company, our employees put in, our early advisors, our early investors. So it was like a great acknowledgement of all of that effort. I was an advisor to Hidden Layer February or March of 22. So to think about sort of like the trajectory over the last 12 or 14 months has been really exciting. So yeah, so we're super grateful. And the Fierce Breakfast, what I love about Fierce is everybody's very authentic when they bring themselves to Fierce. And so the Fierce Breakfast for me was like a hour or two at RSA where nobody was pitching, everybody was authentic, everybody was very kind to each other, which is really what Fierce is all about. So I think I've heard a lot of great feedback, and that's the root cause of it from my perspective. It's just everybody feels very, very empowered and very comfortable to bring, their exact true self to my events.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I came with my colleague Sam from our technical security team, and it was an amazing event, and it's so lovely just to be around so many different women who bring different perspectives and their own backgrounds.
Totally.
And yeah, it was amazing. So kudos to you guys. So let's dig in then to the podcast. So firstly, I want to dig into your background then. So tell us a little bit about your career journey that has gotten you to where you are today, which is a female chief revenue officer in cybersecurity.
Yeah, I have a pretty different, I have a little bit of a different background from most CROs, and then I probably have sort of an unpredictable background as it relates to go-to-market in general. So my background is an MBA in corporate finance. I was a super huge nerd in school, graduated top of my class. So I was like really into finance. I was in Buffalo, New York at the time. That's where I went to school and I graduated. And unfortunately, there weren't a lot of investment banking roles available for young guns coming out of school. So opportunistically, I sort of transitioned into what I would have called biz dev back in the day, probably 3 or 4 years out of college. And then really, and I'm sure that you hear this from a lot of folks, it's just sort of who you meet and the opportunities that present themselves from the people that you've met. And so all of my jobs, of which I've had in 25-ish years, I think I've had about 11 different companies, 4 different industries. Of the 11 companies, 8 were founder-led. But all of those opportunities have presented themselves because after maybe my first or second, I've known folks where I'm going. So I've been very fortunate to be able to sort of use my network to get new opportunities. Hidden Layer, all of the folks here, with the exception of one, came from Silence, which was an antivirus company that sort of revolutionized the antivirus market back around 2015. That's where I met the founders of Hidden Layer, and they're 3 great men. And so really think that a lot of the last 20 years sort of put me in this spot at this time, because the timing was right for them and for me. So I would say Specific to a CRO, I was never an individual sales rep. And I feel strongly that CROs do not have to be individual sales reps that were promoted into the CRO role. I think I've shared with you in the past how I feel about some people and the way they sort of capture a CRO. In my opinion, a CRO main responsibility to an organization is to bring the customer experience to the organization and ensure that all employees are serving our customers and have that sense of urgency for customers. I believe the vice president of sales delivers the quarter. I believe the CRO delivers the year, the 3-year plan, the 5-year plan, the exit. And so therefore, I think folks with a diverse background like I have channel experience, I have biz dev experience, I have OEM experience, I have sales experience, that really complements an effort to really drive sort of cross-functional execution for customers. It's not all about, strategically aligning on one deal. It's strategically aligning the company for all the deals. So when they come in, I'm proud of my, crazy background. I've been at a lot of, I think my average tenure, I calculated it at one time, is probably under 2 years. But I like to stay light on my feet, Elle. I like to sort of get in and out. And again, I think it just all worked out. At this point in my life, I'm very fortunate to find myself a place where I can leverage a lot of that stuff that I've done in the past. 10 of the 25, 10 to the 15 years software, the other 10 actually technology services.
Okay. That's amazing. Well, that's a great background, and clearly you've done an excellent job. I mean, look at the accolades that are coming through for the company, and I know I'm sure there's definitely team collaboration in there as well. So I definitely don't want to take away from. Yeah, but still, I think you've clearly done an incredible job. So that's amazing, and really refreshing as well to hear that the 3 founders who are male, obviously connected with you to be able to take on this position. And yeah, it sounds as though you've had a really good positive experience from it. Did you
100%.
Did you ever imagine that you would be a chief revenue officer one day at all? Like, what turning point did you think, yeah, I will be.
Well, if my co-founder of Fierce was on this call, she would say, Abigail's going to not stop at a CRO. She's going to be a CEO. She's already manifesting that. That's how Rebecca rolls. I always thought I was going to be a leader. I'll say that. Yeah. I don't know, firstborn, Capricorn, daddy's girl, all the things. I was naturally competitive. I was the class president for every year in school. So I do think I have a desire to lead. I have a desire to to see people grow and accomplish more things if I can help it. Like I do have an innate empathy for leadership, I will say. So I think I always felt that. Did I think I would be a chief revenue officer? Probably not. Probably because I've never been that thorough or strategic about the path. I've been much more strategic about what are my contributions, where I am right this moment, and who are the folks that I'm working with. Those 2 things are sort of the ingredients that have propelled me here. I never, and if anyone's watching this and thinking there's some path and you got to go check, that's absolutely not the case. I did not do that. I made mistakes in my career and took bad decisions. I was at a company that ran out of cash on a Wednesday and we had to shut the business down. Probably one of the best things that ever happened to me because I lived through it and I learned that that's not as scary as it might sound to people who haven't lived through it. Failure, I think, is super developmental. So I think, I always knew I would be a leader. Did I think it was going to be in cybersecurity? Absolutely not. Did I think it'd be a sales? And probably not. I probably, expected to be a CFO, but I did write a book about my dad, and I just printed. This is the first copy. Al, look at this. There's my dad. Because a lot of people ask me that question, like, where does the confidence come from, or did you always have it? Because a lot of people have imposter syndrome, or have can I do it? That's something women deal with a lot. I would also do a shout out for my dad because honestly, until I got through college, I thought most men thought women should be in charge of everything because my dad he thought women should be in charge of everything. And so I was reared in an environment of empowerment. Like I was reared thinking that everybody thought that way. And I remember clearly when in my first job in Buffalo at National Fuel, and there was a guy who said something like, who do you think you are trying to change everything? And at that point in time, I was only, 22 years old, working hard, trying to like do all the right things. I thought I was doing the right thing. And he was kind of a slap in the face, like that's not how it's going to go. Not everybody is Wilson Maines. Not everybody likes the change. Not everybody likes your style. Not everybody wants to hear from you, even if it is a good idea. So I give my dad a lot of credit for putting me in this seat today. So I'm giving him the credit. He's since passed away, but I'm giving him the credit by launching this right now.
Oh, well, I'm
Yeah.
sure that he would be incredibly proud, and I'm sure he's watching. And yeah, what a terrific lady that you've you've become without getting all sentimental. But I
Yeah.
think it's true, and I think for any men that might be listening to this who are fathers of daughters, I mean, literally, you couldn't have painted the more picture perfect kind of
Well, that's what I did. I mean,
mother.
I like that's the whole use case for this book. And in one of the it's for dads. And like, there's a worksheet that I want dads and daughters to do. Like, me, I'm very personal. You know that I'm always going to tell you exactly what I think you should be doing. And so in that scenario, like, I'm like, read this great story and then tell your daughter why she's so great. Like, it's such an important relation. And it doesn't have to, it can be a stepdad, it can be an uncle, it can be a single mom to their daughter. It doesn't matter. It's just, for me, it was my dad, but it can be any caregiver. And it's such an important way to start women off. And to be honest with you, not to talk about young women, but I think for cyber to have more women, we do have to talk about young women and teenage girls. There was a report out in February from the CDC called The State of Teenage Girls. And in the report, it talks about how 60% of teenage girls in the US are so depressed that they've given up an activity that they used to like. So dropped a sporting team, dropped an instrument, etc. Over one in 11 have been sexually assaulted at some level, and a third of teenage girls have thought about ending their lives, and half of the third have a plan. Those are staggering numbers, like blew my hair back numbers, like unbelievable numbers. And really what they attributed it to was, COVID was very tough on people, drove everybody to social media, and people are mean to each other on social media, not just boys to girls, but girls on girls.
Yeah.
And so like stuff like this and early involvement with girls, I think benefits cyber because, we need women in cyber that are very resilient and have tremendous courage in order to really change the numbers significantly. So if this book can help that a little bit, that would be great. And anything that I think anybody watching, any women or men in cyber, we need to be thinking about the next generation of women and how to cultivate them and empower them more. Because clearly they need it. Clearly they need
Yeah.
it.
I was going to say, I think that's really important there. And I've always said it that I think that this kind of education piece and this, fostering a place in which females can feel empowered, it does start
Yeah.
from so much earlier on. And it starts with, firstly, the education system and actually, teaching and encouraging girls, but also in the family home. And I know that it's not always possible.
Right.
But where it is possible, I think it is so important because clearly that's had a tremendous impact on your future, your confidence, your resilience. And I think if anyone who is a parent that is listening to this, if they're
Yeah.
thinking about their own children, especially little girls, of course,
Yeah.
it's to really instill that confidence from a young age, clearly.
Yeah. I think I have a 10-year-old daughter. I mean, I think there's something that goes on between like 9 and 10 and 12 and 14. I think there's like a transition in their worldview of themselves, and I think that's the pivotal time to really check in regularly and make sure that we're keeping that vivacious sort of like win at all costs. I read something the other day. Somebody said they said to their 5-year-old daughter, when you grow up, you could be a pilot. And the little girl responded, when I could also just own my own plane. And that's the kind of energy we want to bring through all the way, right? We don't want to lose it in high school, is the headline.
Amazing. Oh, I love that answer. So when we last spoke then on this topic, I remembered that you had spoken about an article that you'd read written by Chief that had seen the gender pay gap is actually kind of widened with women in the C-suite position. So it's gone down. So for every dollar that a man in the C-suite is earning, 75 cents is what women are earning. So Let's talk about this. It's the biggest gap since 2012. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, the article attributed it to the fact that the equity pay of C-suite executives has gone up significantly as a percent of total. And the increase in women's equity pay has been about 20%, and the increase in men's equity pay has been 49%. So that's what's driving, to your point, to the 75 cents in 2020. That number was 88 cents in 2018. And so that was a dramatic drop. And so then you say, well, why are the equity variances so significant? And it's because people are assuming that more risk-taking C-level roles are being filled by men and less risk-taking C-level roles are filled by women. So i.e. a CRO is a very high risk-taking role. There's more men than women in that role. CHROs, less risk-taking, presumably based upon this data, more women are in those roles. And so I think it's a board level discussion, and either the boards have the intestinal fortitude to fix that or they don't. But that, to me, that's where this has the investors in various organizations and the boards needs to have a conscious effort. Also, what I personally feel, what I sort of keeps me motivated to always push the envelope is I believe more women just need to be at the table in all the C roles. And so that is what I'm working on. I'm not holding my breath that the boards or the investors or the other men are going to fix it. We're going to try to get more women in the room. But I think that's what it's attributed to, is that men are being perceived as being in riskier positions and they're therefore being compensated, having some compensating differentials that are higher. Do I agree? Absolutely not. But, I don't spend too much time like complaining. I try to channel all of that into, what can I do? What can anybody do? Even, step by step to try to get more women in that room. That's the headline, is I think more women have to be in that room. And, I'm working with a colleague and she's really passionate around commission pay for women on maternity leave, because it's a crisis situation whereby once you have a child, a lot of people stop paying commissions after 30 days. You've seen all the different comp plans. They move it to this person or that. But anyways, it doesn't work. It's not sustainable. Women drop out of the workforce, drop out of that company, join a new company in 6 months, and they start back where they started. Those are the sorts of things that I think we can work on. She's doing amazing work. Those are the things we can work on to get more women at the table. You sort of have to work from the ground up. That's what I try to do. And I think representation is important too. So I am so appreciative of this opportunity to speak with you and to talk with women, that women are listening, about how you just have to go out there and do it. There's absolutely zero reason why there aren't more female CROs. Zero. We just have to raise our hand and say we want to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say actually, so obviously we know that there is a very low statistic of women in cyber in general, but if you think about women at that C-suite level, especially a CRO, I've even just shared with you, you're the first female CRO that is on this podcast, and I'm sure there are others out there, but why do you think then there is more of a gap with females moving into CRO positions? Is it some of the things that you've mentioned around considerations of risk or maternity and kind of so forth, or are there other things there as well that might prohibit people to gun for this type of position?
I think we can answer it two ways. The one way is I can talk about the externalities, but I won't, because I don't think I can influence the externalities that significantly. So to me, that can feel overwhelming, and maybe so many headwinds, maybe we should give up, which we're not going to do. So what I like to talk about is, what can women do, and what do I see women doing that is sort of, creating their own headwind, basically. And I think what that is ultimately deselecting themselves for whatever the next role is. I'm not saying going from a rep to a CRO is the step, but going from a rep to a manager to an RVP, going from the channel into sales into channel. All of those moves, particularly when you're being promoted into them, women feel, and you know this, we have to say it over and over again, that they have to be if I'm generous, 150% ready for that role. I think women generally think they have to be 300% ready for these roles. They do not. Men are 20% or negative 20% ready for the role when they raise their hand. I'm exaggerating for purposes here, but you get it. But I've seen it. Okay, I've seen it. Okay, I've seen it. They do not. Men spend zero. Am I ready? Can I do it?
Yeah.
They spend time thinking about, how am I getting more money? How lucky are they to have me? Look at what I'm doing right now. It's a big gap. That's a big gap. Again, I'm not changing the men. I'm not looking for them to change. I'm looking for the women to change and the women to say to themselves, does this decision enrich me or not, or diminish me? I always say, does it shine my crown or dull my crown? If you're shining your crown, we're going to do it. If you're dulling your own crown because you're taking yourself out of an opportunity that would shine your crown, that's shame on you, shame on me. And I'm not saying this is easy, by the way. Like, it's not like I woke up at 4 years old and this was what I decided. But like, if you need to hear it, and I hope that I can, one of the things I can do now, as in my 40s, is say to people in their 20s and 30s, you can do it, and if you need help, how, getting comfortable with that concept, all I can tell you is if you put yourself in those situations, you will get so much stronger and it'll become so much more natural. But you really can't learn these things until you actually raise your hand and say, I'm ready for that opportunity. And if somebody pushes back and says, well, you've never done it before, you can immediately say, but I've done this, and this. And that's true, because you have done this, and this, both personally and professionally. And so I think the yes, you can, the empowerment of yourself, the putting yourself in riskier positions is the key, is the major unlock for women to accelerate their careers. The major headwind is the am I ready? Do you think, I would say 8.5 out of 10 calls that I have with women ultimately boil down to am I ready? And all I say with zero information is yes, because I just told you, you don't have to be ready. You don't have to be ready. When you go into a new role, there are collectively people who are there to make you successful. They are assuming you need some time to be successful. I can say as an executive, we assume everybody at every level gets some time to be successful. It is not a binary on day one decision that is made. And I think because women naturally sort of lead with a different style, what they find is that more people want to help them versus maybe some of the other leaders that are male, because they respond better to the female style. So there's almost momentum. The key is just taking the step forward before you may feel you're ready. And I totally appreciate that's a very uncomfortable big step. That's why I'm writing kids' books, to make sure young girls learn this out of the gate. But it's like in the book, I have a quote from Ann Richards. It's like Ginger Rogers did everything Fred Astaire did. She just did everything backwards and in high heels. As I tell people, I do everything that a CRO does. I just do it faster and in the high heels. That's it. It's the same, so, but we have to kind of come at it with that perspective, and hype ourselves up a little bit. I think it's important to, and I think that women are getting better at hyping each other up. I recently just studied up on this thing called the Queen Bee Syndrome, which was horrible because I'm in the Beehive as a Beyonce fan, and the Queen Bee Syndrome is this horrific thing where people like me, if I were to treat younger women bad because I want them to quote earn the right to get, that's got to go. I think that's better, to be honest with you, than it was 20 years ago. But we women need to hype each other up. And sincerely and pragmatically. And sometimes that's uncomfortable. What I'm advocating for right now is to take risky change in your career to accelerate yourself versus spending the next 2 years, talking to a mentor about your soft skills or hard skills development. I am saying rip the Band-Aid off and put your hand up. I am saying tell 10 people that you want to be promoted by December 25th of this year. Just put it out there and say, all of which is very uncomfortable for women. It really is. It's very uncomfortable. We believe that if we work hard, we're going to be recognized and people are going to promote us, and it's not going to happen. I have had that. I believe that. From Buffalo, I'm a Midwesterner. We work super hard. Doesn't happen. I've been stepped over twice. Directly stepped over, visibly stepped over. It was super terrible because other people in the organizations were you're being stepped over. And I was I know I'm being stepped over. And it happened to me twice. So totally shame on me. Major diminishment, major crown almost got knocked off during that. So learn from me, which is you cannot be stepped over. People always have to know where, because in both of those scenarios, both of the scenarios at the board level said we didn't know you wanted it, which I actually think is kind of bullshit, Elle. But I didn't say it outright. Did they know? Absolutely. Did I say it specifically? No. So shame on me. But if anyone is watching this and they're sitting there and they're thinking about the next role they want, I think they needed to tell 10 people that that's the role they want, period. And it's risky and you might not get it, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It might feel like it matters a lot. In 20 years, it's not going to matter. And you'll be much farther ahead if you can do that.
I think that that's some really incredible advice that you shared, and you're right. That kind of approach certainly is going to stretch people's comfort zones, but when
Yeah,
you're stretched out of your comfort zone, that's, inevitably when things get moving and things actually happen and you
right.
learn and you grow. So yeah, I think if women can get in the mindset of almost not being in their head too much about it. I think that's what
Yeah,
happens is we get in our heads and you overanalyze and you think about it. It's kind of a case of, right, do I want to do this? Yes, I do. Let's get out of my head about it and just tell people and make it happen, take the risk.
and I
Is
think
what
we
I'm
do
hearing.
that personally in our personal lives way better. Like I feel like women make lots of decisions, make a lot of things happen. Really don't get in our heads about raising families, taking care of families, taking care of our friends. Like that is so intuitive and natural, and we never question it or debate it. For some reason, that same mindset doesn't translate into the work environment very often or consistently. And I think that's all I'm asking is to kind of take that same momentum into your professional career. And it is sometimes when I tell people to tell 10 people that they want to be promoted, I do say like 3 of them can be your pets. Like you don't have to do like 10 executives at your current company. You could do like 2 and then the rest of them can be your buds. But you do have to say of the 10, like 2 of them have to be like super awkward. That would be, just to be clear, I'm not expecting 10 super awkward conversations.
I was just about to call my CEO, my CCO, my bosses in London.
Right,
Just
you're like,
let them know, everyone know, please. No, it's
exactly.
great advice, and I think it's it's very positive and just going straight for it, and that's what we
Yeah,
need to do. And women as well, exactly what you're doing, need to be able to support each other because sometimes it's hard to do it for yourself, but the majority of it does come from internally. But if you can be supported around a network of both male and females, actually, for that
right,
matter, who can be a bit of a cheerleader and champion and give you that nudge too, that's
yeah,
great. So if you're,
totally.
like yourself, if you're that person that's naturally more inclined to be confident and kind of go-getter, and this is what you're doing, giving other people a bit of a nudge and saying, yeah, okay, you can do it. It's fine. It's all
Right.
good. So no, it's a great advice. So, how do you think that we, or I guess maybe businesses, can calculate the positive impact then of having women at the leadership table in their organization?
Hey, it's super easy. I think they should just ask their employees, partners, and customers. Like, I think that's the best place to go to get that information. I was thinking about that, like, I would never want to put that responsibility on the women in the organization to justify, right? Because then there's almost an assumption that they need to do that. I think the real unlock to understand the power of adding more women to your leadership team comes from your key constituents. And I would add investors. So your investors, your employees, your customers, and your partners in any order, they are the ones who feel it because women bring personality, they bring compassion, they bring real empathy to an organization, and the more you have, the more deep relationships you're going to have with those constituents, which is really in particular during times of sort of some economic headwinds critical. And I think cyber struggles with that, and I think part of the reason you don't have $100 billion a year revenue cyber company is because we don't have enough women creating those relationships with all those constituents. So we have a lot of very successful cyber companies and they get to a certain point and then they start to buy a bunch of stuff, but they're not organically growing into 50, 70, 80, $100 billion like you see other industries grow. I think for cyber to get into that sort of category of industry within technology, you're going to need more diversity, period, but then more women specifically. And that to me is the big difference between us and big tech.
Yeah, yeah,
I
no,
consider cyber to still be smaller relative to the other big categories.
yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're right. I think that's it's a good starting point. Customers and people in the business, because that's typically where we. I don't want to say are better, but we have a strength in empathizing
Yeah,
and
yeah.
empathizing. Sorry, with people. What do you think is some of the most potentially, I guess, kind of hazardous traits that you've seen maybe derail kind of female leaders and their careers before, and I guess it sounds like sometimes it can be self-inflicted or sometimes it can be external, but is there anything that you've seen particularly that you think is can be relatively damaging to a female leadership career?
Yeah, yes. I mean, from my perspective, as another female leader, if I was watching a female leader, if anyone gave up, I would say
Yeah.
you've taken a step back. But they're doing it for their own reasons, and I respect it. But that would be my immediate answer: is that they deselect, they take themselves out of whatever running they should have not. I would say if I just take myself out and objectively answer that question, or speak about my own experience. Women, there is a double standard as it relates to women that are strong being considered aggressive, women that are direct being considered to be I don't know, demonstrative, negative. I get negative a lot from people,
Really?
because I am very passionate around. So I have this concept that, in an organization, nobody ever, like, you would never say, oh, the hidden layer engineering team is great, but boy, the hidden layer marketing team isn't great. Like, there's only hidden layer.
Yeah.
There's only one entity. And so I have a strong belief that the whole end-to-end experience, which is what I think CROs should be doing, the whole end-to-end experience provides a great customer, employee, partner, investor, advisor experience. So sometimes when you're in organizations, that is perceived as negative because the individual running their silo who thinks they're doing a hell of a job is like, but you're not acknowledging how great my baby is. Like, look at all this, look at all this. And that's true. That's his perception of my feedback. My position is, in order for a company to be successful, they all have to be working together. And so I have been perceived as being, quote, negative in certain, not where I am now, but in the past. So sometimes because women are very thorough and women are very authentic about those sorts of things, we can seem like we're being negative, or we're not, or we're just being, when we're trying to lead an organization through a transformation, the result of, like, if a man was saying it, it's transformative. If a woman is saying it, she's being negative. It's really that. It's like that. Now, am I saying that women shouldn't do that? No, but I have seen that derail careers. I have seen it live with my own eyes, and with myself and an executive ruining our relationship. They can't take it. Like, they shut down, which is why I leave out. Like, I'm not for the wasting time trying to convince somebody why I'm great or why I should be in the role. Like, if they don't want it, I'm out. Like, I'll pull that ripcord pretty fast. So, but I do think it derails careers. Like, so if you're not up for that kind of churn, if you're not up for that kind of disruption, I think there are probably times when some of that information or some of that feedback could be shared in a more sensitive or toned down way, because whether we like it or not, that is the environment of corporate America today. There's a double standard. I have personally, like, I'm saying that I don't live by it all the time, to be honest with you, because I feel very like a conviction that it's the right way for the business. Like, I feel like that's the right way for success. But it's not the easiest way. I'll say that. Like, that's not the easiest way to do things. I think women, if there are women that are treating other women bad, that would derail their career too, because there aren't many of us. And so we'll eat each other alive if we do that. And so I literally just wrote something about this queen bee syndrome. And my position on that is twofold. One, if you work for a queen bee, I think you need to get away from the queen bee, because there's really very little a subordinate can do to a queen bee. Two, if you're a peer or above a queen bee, you need to make it very, very clear that they are going to have personal consequences for continuing to act like that, because that has got to go. Like, women on women destruction in the workplace, not going to happen. Like, that, it's 2023. Like, that is I don't know, that's some like 1600 level stuff from my perspective. So I think those are the key behaviors.
Yeah.
The biggest one by far is walking away, is saying it's not worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it for our daughters. It's worth it for our friends' daughters. It's worth it for our nieces. Like, there is an element of, like, where we are continuing to break the glass. And sometimes I feel like the glass gets reinstalled and we got to break it again. But I mean, I think it's very important I always tell people, I think it's very important for society that women get to equality. Like, it has to be 50-50 everywhere, or else we are, we're reducing GDP. We're reducing the ability to cure cancer. If we don't have women with an equal share at minimum in cyber, then cyber will never achieve the goal that they're trying to achieve. It's just simple as that. And we're so far behind. So we have a lot of glass to break. So I would ask anyone that's watching this not to give up if they're debating it. And I understand if they're debating it. Like, it's not easy, but that's why you got to try to make it fun. Like, and you try not to take everything so seriously. Like, I'm drinking out of a cup and it says, you have the same amount of hours in the day as Beyonce. Okay. Like, this is the sort of stuff women need to power us through. Okay. Like, use all the tools.
No, I love that. I think it's I think people sometimes sit too long in a certain situation, even when they can feel it's not great for them. And I think having that mindset to say, okay, I'm not going to stand for this. I'm, if we can't get on board with one another, then great, out. Someone else can, utilize my skill set and the amazing things that I can bring. And like you said, easier said than done. Sometimes certain kind of external circumstances don't always permit that, but I think where possible, if we can always kind of have that mentality, that will only kind of put us in good stead. And yeah, I totally agree with the when women are kind of asserting themselves, it can come across as bossy or negative, or it's not always construed in the right way, and that needs to stop. People need to just accept that. You're right. There's a big difference in how it's received from a male, I would say, or emotional. I hate when we're referred. I hate when they're referred to
Well,
as
it's very diminishing, right? Like, it's a very sort of, it's just a shitty thing to say about somebody. Like, it totally takes their power by saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, agreed. So I guess if you were going to kind of leave us then with I mean, you've given a lot of great advice, to be honest. So you've been, literally going for it. And it's amazing.
Right.
But if there was going to be kind of one last thing that you would want to leave us with, what would it be? What's the most important thing someone that can take from this episode?
I mean, I think you really just got to focus on the future and leave the past in the past. So, if you're being held back because something happened in your past, or you made a mistake, or somebody hurt you, or you got stepped over, like, you have to channel that and just focus on the future. I have a really strong perspective that you have to smash the rear view mirror. Like, that's a big theme in a lot of what I think about, because life is super short, and you can't let anything like that hold you back. So I would say that, and I would say you have to tell 10 people what you want to be promoted to by the end of the year. Those would be the two things.
Yeah, no, amazing. That's great. And it's not too late as well, right? So
no, it's never too late. It's never too late. It's never too late. That's absolutely, that's very true. One of my best friends and peers, I think she's like in her mid 80s, and Helen, and she's an amazing woman, and it's not too late. She lives in Texas. She just came back from Holland, and she's like living her best life, so that nothing is too late.
Yeah, no, I think that's super important. So even if you've not been able to earlier on in your life or your career quite have it the way that you would want it to pan out, you can always turn things around. You just have to have that one piece inside and put it out there and not be afraid.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. You have courage. You have to be confident. You have to be. It takes a lot of courage. It's not easy, but you don't be afraid. Eat fear for breakfast.
Yeah. No. Amazing. Well, look, thank you so much, Abigail, for joining. It's been a real pleasure to have you on this episode, and I absolutely love your ethos and everything that you stand for and how you operate. And I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. It's always great to talk with you. You're awesome.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to this episode. I hope that you found it inspiring and insightful. I will be releasing each episode of this series on a bi-weekly basis, so if you've enjoyed what you've heard, please keep your eyes peeled for the next release. I've loved having you here today and look forward to having you on the next one.